Yes.
Okay. Let's get started. The Nantucket Conservation Commission meeting for Wednesday, May 30th. We are recording. If you're recording, please let us know. And if you could silence your cell phones, it would be highly appreciated. I'm going to start with the public meeting. Public comment for items not being heard tonight. Anyone wish to have any comments? Okay. Seeing not, we're going into the public hearing. Notice of intent. We have a few continuances. Mary D. Starr, 19 East Creek Road, and Gregory Ray's, 19 East Creek Road, are continued to June 13th. 21 Crooked Lane LLC, 1 Westchester Street Extension, is continued to June 27th. Sconset Beach Preservation Fund, 59-119 Baxter Road, continued to July 11th. And in the certificates of compliance, we have Pippin's Way Homeowners Association Trust, 12 Gardner Road, is continued till June 27th. So we're going to start with Nantucket Island Land Bank, 4850 Tennessee Avenue. Maybe not.
I'm going to recuse myself.
But before you go away, the land bank folks aren't here yet.
Oh, okay.
I would suggest maybe
Skipping
skipping them
back. Sure.
and coming back and then starting with the 54 Low Beach.
Okay, so Town Nantucket, 54 Low Beach Road.
You're up.
Oh, second time I've been here. You said it's a demolition of the...
Please give your name again.
Charles Gibson.
Okay, thank you.
The abandoned storage building now used to be the Loran A building for the Coast Guard. Concrete masonry building, concrete roof. We're going to take it down to below grade and leave the site basically as is and clean it up, and that's the plan.
So the last time we continued this, because we were waiting for the natural heritage comments to come back, we have those now, and there's no issues or conditions from
Okay.
that. That was the last kind of piece of information we were waiting for.
So you are taking out the floor? Because I think there's a...
Well, it's up in the air. It's got kind of a crawl space under it. It's elevated, so we're going to take it down below grade. Not remove the footings, but take it down below grade.
Which includes the slab, because that's above. I remember it was stepped up. When I took the generators out, we had to trim down.
There won't be anything there above grade when we're finished.
Right. So theoretically, there'll be something down like 4 feet or so.
It depends what they
Maybe.
pull out.
We know that whatever they put.
We don't
right.
know. I mean, if it's 10 feet solid concrete below, it's not probably coming out without blasting. So
Right.
It's military grade.
Yeah, it's military grade.
that's
Yeah,
not concerned.
I understand.
We were doing the roller hockey rink where you hit one of these walls and it almost had a JCB flip over.
Trying to hook it.
Yeah, just we didn't know it was there and we hooked onto it. So
Oh, God.
we pulled it over. Yeah.
Okay.
So then is there a condition that when this thing ultimately becomes exposed, because even if it's not 5, 10,
Yeah.
15 years, it will become exposed, then at that point, the town of Nantucket's responsible for removing it?
We are. I mean, it's town.
Okay. So then that would be,
Yeah, in the condition.
yeah. Okay.
Other questions? Questions from the public? Okay, see not. Jeff, we have everything you need?
We do now.
Okay.
Motion to close?
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Mike. Oh.
Hey.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
All right, thanks, Charlotte.
Sorry about that.
Okay.
Golden eye.
Yeah, go.
Harrison and I.
Bennett, aye.
LaFleur, aye.
Shampoo, aye. Steinhauer, aye. Top of mine.
Okay. Forgot about that. Okay. Thank you. Gotta catch up. So, go do that one. So Hans Delgard, 33 Nantucket Road.
So real quick, as we are getting this out, just wanted to say, we got a letter today from the abutter who had expressed some concerns about this project at the previous hearing, and they sent us a letter today that if people want to read it, I can pass it around, but it essentially just says that they've withdrawn any opposition to the project and are
Good.
happy with the final design
Good.
as a butters.
Okay, that worked out.
Brian Madden from
Or at least
LEC
satisfied.
representing the applicant Hans Delgard. I'll just kind of overview some of the revisions since last meeting we had at the end of April. Primarily the drainage updates and some revisions to the pool layout and configuration to address the commission's concerns. But since we last met, the applicant did work with the abutter to address their concerns. And so kind of just review the changes since the last meeting. The proposed pool size was reduced and shifted to maximize that separation to the downgrading wetland system, which resulted in a decrease in the structural footprint of the 50 foot by 115 square feet, and increasing the setback by 10 feet in total. And the proposed drainage design, we had kind of talked about it loosely at the meeting, at the last meeting, was incorporation of a bioretention feature, which is shown here, which is going to collect the roof runoff and the patio runoff, roof runoff from the back of the house, and the patio area will be redirected to that. The bioretention area is going to be planted up with a seed mix and sweet pepper bush shrubs and high bush blueberry shrubs. In the front of the house, the roof runoff is going to be collected in a enlarged subsurface infiltration system. If you remember previously, we had two up front. That was shifted over to the west side of the property, and the adjoining property to the west is a little bit higher up. But on both sides of the property, there will be these vegetated swales that will enable any superficial overland flow to the down gradient wetland resource areas. And you can see those kind of proposed contours along the sides of the property. And there's also some buffer zone, or some buffer screening plantings that are shown along that easterly property boundary to accommodate that neighbor. We've enlarged the buffer zone enhancement area to a total of 3,770 square feet. And again, that's revegetating the entirety of the 25-foot buffer zone and then some. We're proposing to remove an existing chicken coop down immediately adjacent to the wetland itself. And we kind of just summarized the proposed improvements to resource areas and buffer zones associated with the project. But I guess I'll just turn it over to questions at this point. We did submit a pretty detailed stormwater report regarding the drainage design completed by Bracken Engineering. And Ryan Maxwell from Bracken Engineering is here if there's any questions on that front.
Questions?
This is evergreen hedge, native where it goes into the 50.
Yeah, it will have to be native 50 foot. Yeah.
The bioretention area, you're digging down inside the 25 for this one?
Slightly, just to accommodate some retention and treatment before there's release to the resource area. But it's all, the water flow is all going that way, so it's contributing to the water balance associated with the wetland. But the bottom of it is not tapping into groundwater.
It's only, 1 foot down from the grade.
High groundwater is at 12.9, so that's 13.5. So it's just some treatment before it gets into there.
So are you gonna need like heavy machinery to dig that out?
I'd say it could be done with a Bobcat or a Mini. But again, this entire area is all either somewhat denuded or the grazed
Pasture.
field. Yeah, pasture. So it'll all be planted up. And it's not going to be like a landscape feature. It'll be natural.
Mm-hmm. So
So
we
is
plant.
this cross sections are in that area? The detail we've done.
The pit.
Yeah. Is that done down there? Because it seems like.
Yeah, I think that is right there.
Okay.
Other questions? No. Okay, questions from the public on this one? Okay. Anyone else? So Jeff, we have everything we need?
We do.
Close
We have
it.
all the required information.
Close.
Close. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Roll call.
Oh, yeah.
Oh. Commissioner Gold?
Arisman, aye.
Bennett, aye.
LaFleur, aye.
Shampoo, aye.
Steinmauer, aye.
Topham, aye.
Thank you very much.
Catch up time on this one.
And
Okay.
Thanks, Brent.
the land bank is here.
Oh, okay, so we're gonna switch to the Nantucket Island Land Bank, 48 and 50 Tennessee Avenue. We're shifting upward here.
Recuse.
Hi, I'm Rachel Freeman, representing the Nantucket Islands Land Bank, and I'm back before you with the Chase Dock, which is located at 48 and 50 Tennessee Ave. We're proposing a rebuild of this dock, and the last time we were in here, we were asked to take a second look at the idea of using fiber grate instead of, or some sort of grading material instead of planking. And we went back and did that, and we looked at a cost comparison, and all this information is included in your packet. And in our research, that we went into kind of being open-minded, you know, what is the most environmentally friendly way to do this? We came across a recent article by John Logan, who actually works for the Division of Marine Fisheries, and it talks quite a bit, and I don't know if you got a chance to read it, but it talks quite a bit about current design standards and whether or not they're actually affecting marsh surface vegetation. And so I included a little bit of a summary in that. And I think what we came down to is that we would definitely prefer to use wood decking over grading. And the primary reasons, which I've listed here, are that there's four of them. One is that the cost of materials and installation really is quite a bit more. You know, we're looking at about $1,600 for wood decking when we're looking at over $7,000 probably for the fiber grate. It's challenging to do any sort of repair and replacement, and I know these things are theoretically supposed to last forever, but if you do have to repair it, it's a huge plank you're repairing, you know, it's a section versus having to repair a piece of wood, which is easier to get here. We have had issues of public opinion in the past, and we actually have some concerns on our staff because when you're supposed to cut fiber grate, it's fiberglass, you know, you're supposed to be wearing masks and things like that. Or I don't know if it's fiberglass, but anyways, plastic, so it's supposed to be, you're not supposed to be exposing yourself to inhaling that stuff. And I guess the land bank's current feeling is that if there was a true environmental net benefit to using fiber grate, we would be open-minded to paying the extra amount of money, and we would be open-minded to, you know, dealing with all these other things. But based on the research that I did, it suggests that there isn't a huge impact of fiber grate environmentally for docks. And actually, it seems like the best thing you can do, just to quickly summarize, was to orient it north-south, which is good to know. At this site, that's not entirely possible because this is a replacement, and to raise it up as high as it can possibly go, basically, because that's when you're really avoiding most of your shading. The other thing that you could do is really reduce the amount of bracing, and we are going to definitely continue to do that. You know, the fewer poles you have down the side and the fewer braces you have across the center, the less potential for catching rack and things like that and ice flow, thereby damaging the marsh surface. So that was what our research suggests, and therefore I'm back to request that we are able to continue to build the dock as currently designed with the wood planking and not use the fiber.
How high can you build this within code without a railing?
It is going to end up, I believe that the current design actually has a railing anyways.
Okay, does it? I didn't realize that.
Also, the DEP approved this, not that it's a huge issue. Yes. So currently we have a one-sided.
Oh, okay, I missed that.
Because basically you can't go up 3 feet and by building code not have some form of a railing. So DEP requires a 1-to-1. So if you're up 3, you got to be 3 feet. Or if you're 3 feet wide, you have to be 3 feet high. Basically, this article suggests that higher is better, but there's obviously a visual concern as well with that. But there just isn't proven that what they did was they actually put light thermocouples underneath it, and it wasn't showing that there was increased light penetration due to fiber grade. It was that simple. There was some. I can go on, but I don't know if you really want to hear me go on.
It's hard to believe.
It was kind of fascinating, actually. I don't know if you read the article.
I got you.
It's hard to believe that there's no benefit to it, but
I guess those squares are small enough and deep enough that they probably shade the bunch too.
unless the sun's directly overhead.
That's exactly what it is. And that's why the orientation, the north-south orientation, actually matters so much. Is because it's really the only benefit you're getting from fiber grade is when the sun is directly above, and that's for such a limited amount of time that it's not actually a net benefit.
I mean, the only time you could orient it north-south is if your dock is going from that way or in Reading. It's site dependent.
It is somewhat site dependent, yes.
Unless you zigzag. Switchbacks.
Anyways, I thought his research was really interesting. I thought it was really interesting that he's from the Division of Marine Fisheries, and it's literally being published now. I think it came out in May. So, the Mass Division of Marine Fisheries.
Convinced me.
Yeah. No, good work.
Do you have diagonal bracing in this thing? It seems a little.
We have
minimalist,
diagonal
which is
bracing
fine.
that is
I didn't see it in the drawings, but.
shown on here.
It's on
Oh.
It will be
page
reduced
2
to
of the set
as
of plans.
few as we can have.
see it.
It will
Okay.
basically be reduced as few as we can have with being structurally
Yep.
sound.
Right.
And same for the side posts.
Skip every other bed or every 4 or 5 beds.
Yeah, we're going to make it as minimal as we possibly can.
Okay. Any questions? Okay. Questions from the public? What's everyone here for? Okay. Seeing that, Jeff, we have everything we need to close?
We do.
Second?
Second.
Okay. All's in favor? Golding?
No. I think that it should be 2 feet 11 wide to 2 feet 11 high, so that there isn't a rail, and I think it's going to be ugly. And I share Ben's concerns, and nothing personal, Rachel. I'm voting no.
Okay.
Well,
Close? Well,
this is just to close the public hearing.
Just to close the public hearing.
Well, there you go. Okay. So I vote aye to close the public hearing. Sorry.
We'll let you revote later in orders of conditions.
Think about it. Okay. Harrison?
Ayersman, aye.
Bennett, aye.
Fleur, aye.
Shampoo, aye.
Steinhauer, aye.
Okay. And the top one recused. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Where am I here? Okay. And bank. That's continued. Got that one. Crichton House Holdings, LLC, 133 Pulpus Road.
So as David comes up, just to remind everyone, this is a hearing that kind of initiated through an enforcement action that we issued out on 133 Pulpus Road about 6 to 8 weeks ago, I'd say, pretty close. But they've been pretty responsive and pretty quick, so this is kind of the culmination of that.
We made the deadline.
Right.
Yes, this is a project at 133 Pulpus Road, common driveway comes up and around. It abuts Pulpus Road, it's just south of Pulpus Road, and abuts the bike path. The intention of the project is to put in a swimming pool and do some landscaping, put in fencing and walking paths down to the bike path and through the property. It got ahead of itself. There was a mix-up on where the property lines were and who owned what property. There was some brush cutting that took place on our property and on the abutting property, and for the installation.
One second. Excuse me, guys. I'm sorry. Keep going. Appreciate it. Thanks.
And-
Okay.
and for the installation of the fence, and the fence was installed. You can see on here, I have delineated the wetland. The wetland, there's two wetland systems, actually. I think they come together back in the back. On the abutting property that we have flagged, they were previously flagged, at least this one was previously flagged, and I think this one was also flagged for the bike path before. So there is a record of them. My delineation may be a little bit higher than the previous delineations due to the fact that there was very high water in this wetland system this spring, and I went around the rack line. I hate to be below the rack line. So anyway, what is proposed here is the swimming pool and most of the proposed lawn are outside of the buffer zone. The portion of the fence is in the buffer zone, right at 50 feet. I know it's a split rail fence, and that's not considered a structure, except a portion of it does have a wire mesh on it, which would be considered a structure. It is for the purpose of being a swimming pool fence. But it is outside of 50, so there are no structures within 50. Most of the work that occurred was well outside of 25, except for one swath that went down to the wetland boundary. I want to say that this area, this is on the abutting property, all on the abutting property, is growing back. It was a maritime shrubland. There's a lot of arrowwood. Unfortunately, there's honeysuckle in there, cherry, oak coming in, beaked hazelnut, things like that. There's some bracken coming in, and things right now are, the shrubs are 2 to 3 inches high, and there are other herbaceous plants, including goldenrods, and the bracken are coming in. My recommendation, they have installed a silt fence along the edge of the fence in this area. There's basically no soil disturbance that has occurred in the buffer zone. The toe of the grading for this area is right along the buffer zone. It might have encroached slightly, but they immediately after meeting with Jeff, they did put up the silt fence, and so there's been no sedimentation coming off of the site and running into a resource area or even into the buffer zone. And so Jeff allowed them to continue the work on the swimming pool because it was outside of the buffer zone. And they have, basically, it hasn't proceeded very far, but since I saw it, but they are working on that. This area is within a matched natural heritage habitat. We have filed with Natural Heritage and are awaiting their response. Okay. Hence, we will be asking for a continuance until we do get a response from them. Okay. But my recommendations are to continue the work, or do the work as proposed on the plan, and to allow the areas that were cut. There were some cedars that were planted over here as screening. The Cassidys thought they owned this property because they just bought it, and the lawn from this house actually came over like this. Mm-hmm. And so they thought they owned the property. They came in, they brushed out it, and they started working on it. And unfortunately, they found out when they did the survey for the fence that they didn't own it. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then they discovered that there was a wetland there. So. Yep. So my recommendation on the areas that were brush hogged by mistake is to let them grow back. I don't know if anybody's been out there recently. They are coming up. I would say it would be about a foot tall, but in July, and 2 to 3 feet tall in the fall, and next year I'm not going to want to crawl through it. It was nice of them to brush hog because it made the delineation much easier. From a strictly practical point of view.
From like habitat, ecology, those points of view.
Well, it created edge.
Yes, for crows and bunnies and things. So this was all mowed down?
No. This is all, none of this was touched.
So only...
Okay, the only areas that were touched were the fence line, went around that way,
And then
This
down here.
area right in through here and like that, and that's the fence line. The shrub line we picked up from aerials was about here, so this area was brush off. This area has not been brush off.
Okay.
This is proposed path, and these are proposed paths up around here. No wetlands back.
And then is this already lawn here?
Yeah.
And that's why this is proposed?
The lawn, yeah, the lawn was probably, well, the edge of the brush, it was probably, this was all lawn in here. The pool is in what was, about what was in, it was, I need to show it on there what was there before.
And then can you just point out again for me what portion of the fence has the mesh?
Actually, it goes all the way around the property. But the mesh is on this portion right around here, around the house, so it'll be the swimming pool.
Okay, so
Yeah.
the fence down here
No,
won't have
regular.
any mesh. Okay.
And it's a split rail. And they would like to cut a couple of paths in through there and have a gate out to the.
And that's all outside the 50 anyways, too, so.
It's all outside of the fence.
Yeah, except for that. Yeah, actually, there's all, okay.
That's right on the edge. And I know there are some representatives from the neighbors here. I'm sure.
Do we have other questions in the commission? Okay.
Pretty straightforward. As long as it grows back.
We should have monitoring on
Yeah.
it,
Yeah.
just to make sure.
Because we need to make sure it's not cut again for views and things like that.
Well, the good thing is that there is a fence in place, so we know where the line is, but
Yeah.
we need to make sure that it doesn't encroach past that. Is anything on their property past the 50-foot buffer zone?
Basically, the 50-foot right there is, the fence is just outside.
Just on,
of the
yeah.
All right, so it's kind of doing, the fence is doing double duty really in this case.
I did take some pictures today. I don't know if they're.
If you show those, David, you'll have to send those to us.
Yeah.
If you show them those pictures, you need to send them to us so we can add them to the record.
I will send.
You have to give us your phone.
You have to continue anyway, so I think it's probably
Yeah,
a
we're
better
gonna
decision
okay.
to just send them in and then
Okay.
we'll go from there.
Okay, so if there are no more questions from the commission, Commission, I'll open it up to the public. If, Franny, please give your name.
Prentice Claflin.
Yep.
131 Pulpus Road. And it's more comment than questions, Mr. Chairman. We bought this property from Ellen Stark, who was the original owner of this. And it was neighborly and wonderful. And some of you may know that I was in hospital for a period this winter, but this is the only notice that I've gotten. I had no other notice, didn't even know that the property had sold. And I came back from hospital, and on Monday morning, heard 3 chainsaws going and giant bushwhacker. And to me, we've spent since 1983 building gardens, improving the property. My daddy used to say to me, you got something, leave it in better shape. And the conservation people wanted our gardens to be in their annual tour in the Nantucket Gardens. To us, this was a desecration that it went down to Sarah Riley's Road, which serves the 4 houses down there. And they worked on just clearing the property for 5 to 6 weeks of constant noise going on. And to some of the men that were working there, originally I said, hey, you're coming over on our property. And he was from Central America, and I spoke Spanish with him. And he said, hey, I used to cut your lawn when I was working with Eric Sherm's crew. To me, this is almost as bad as what happened with holly trees. And to be broadsided with it wasn't right neighborly as far as I could figure out. I mean, I met the owner this morning and the clerk of the works, and to me, it's just desecrating some of our land. And I said to him, to me, trees on Nantucket are sacred. And here it was trees gone, everything gone, right down to the ground. And that was just our objection to what had happened. So I think monitoring it, I mean, there's nothing that can be done. The horses out of the barn. But it was just discouraging to see that happen, not know that it was going to happen until you guys sent me the notice of intent. So it goes.
Yeah, thank you.
So it goes.
Very much. Appreciate it.
Thanks, man.
State your name, please.
David Buckley with Cohen & Cohen. We represent the abutter who owns the property at 137 Pulpus Road. So if you'll see here, it's the property that's indicated right here. And you'll see this is the area that was clear cut. And my client's concern is basically related to the way that the unpermitted work resulted in the change of water flow on the property. We haven't had a chance to engage a specialist to confirm our anecdotal results, but the effect seemingly of the work on the neighboring property has resulted in standing water on our client's property, which you can see here. I can pass these around. So here you'll see a man-made pond and all this standing water here, and I have a caretaker and landscaper here who can testify to this. In this area where there is no standing water has been dry for as long as the owner can remember. I know David disagrees that the clear cutting didn't result in this, but there seems to be a clear link between the two. We also think there might be disturbance to the soil. I've been out to the site myself, and again, we haven't engaged a specialist to take a look at this, but our concern is the displacement of water and the potential change of grade and its impact on our property and the expansion of the standing water in that area. And I understand that certainly a unusual year in terms of the height of the water table, but the link between the two can't be discounted at this point. If you'd like, I could have the caretaker and landscaper come up and just get on record their anecdotal observations about the water at 137.
When did the water first show up? When did this start happening?
I think that's better answered by, do you guys want to come up?
Please give your name, please. Hey,
So,
could you give your name for the record, please?
Dave Ryan.
Thank you.
So, I've never seen standing water there before. I was shocked to see the amount of brush cutting that was done. Didn't even know there was another property over there for so many years. But it's very, very hilly. Cut down to the ground. I'm not sure if grade was changed because you wouldn't know, because you wouldn't have known the other property was over there. You couldn't see through to another house anywhere from the 137 property. So there's never been water there before. It kind of reminds me of a California wildfire. Once the vegetation's gone, there's nothing to actually suck it up or divert it or any water that might be coming heavy. The last 5 years have been more, I think, heavier rainfalls anyway over on Nantucket. But once again, there's never been any standing water there. There is the koi pond that's right next to us. That's the only water that's ever been there. I think that this is like direct result of the brush cutting on there. I'm sure that everything's going to start coming back up again, but to think there's going to be anything more than 6 to 12 inches over the next year, I don't think that it's going to go much higher than that. It'll take 3 years before it actually gets up to about this height, I think. So I would always think that having more vegetation added to the property and a berm to divert the water again possibly might be the way to go, but it's just take a
Do you know when these pictures was taken?
I do not. I don't have a date on that.
It would have been, I would say, 2 months ago, maybe 3 months ago.
A few months.
Almost.
Yeah.
Taken by the owner, I'm sure. But when I was brought out there to take a look at the property, it was deeper than that. So
This is the lined, it's lined, right? This koi pond is right here?
yes, that's correct.
Okay.
It's got a line.
Right, the pond is.
No, so there is an RDA, a request for determination on file in our office in regards to that koi pond and then the wetland that is shown with water here. That was determined by the commission at one point to be a vegetated wetland. I mean, I know wetlands don't always have standing water.
Right.
I know that's kind of weird to picture a little bit, but it did go through the board at some point, and the board determined that the pond is a line pond and non-jurisdictional, and then the adjacent wetland is a jurisdictional area. So that's on record in our office right now. So that's kind of what we're going from for that. The other one towards the bike path, again, that one was last really reviewed for the Pulpsford bike path filing, which is a long time ago now.
So this standing, well, we're about,
Yeah.
I mean, rough guess, where is that on this lot? This
It
area here?
It would have been.
So it's extension of
I
this.
found evidence
Yeah.
of basically a rack line up close to my wetland boundary in here. And it actually agreed with the wetland vegetation that was there in the soils and the topography. I'm not saying that it wasn't an unusually high water level, and I do believe it did seem like a higher line, and higher flooding level than I would have normally seen in a situation like this. I mean, it is a shrub swamp. There is evidence that there is some standing water in there seasonally, just shallow, because the shrubs are all pulled up on hummocks and pulled all up, the root mass is pulled up. So, I'm not disputing the fact that the water levels in here do look higher than normal, but I haven't seen the rainfall records for the month of March, but I understand it was reportedly, to me, it was right after a 5-inch rainfall.
Yeah.
And there had been subsequent noise or something. But we're trying to fix.
Right. No, we understand.
So we have concerns. We appreciate the request for continuance because we would like to work with a specialist to determine what the best mitigation or remedy to this is. At this point, we have doubts as to whether or not just letting things naturally regrow will do that. But there's another attorney here representing an abutter for 135, so I will pass the mic, so to speak.
Well done.
I have a question.
Any other questions?
What the soil's like out there?
They're very sandy, they're sandy, and then you get into the dark, very dark brown, over mottled, and then black over glade. So there is a hydric soil down at the bottom. The up is all, I don't know what the soil, I can't remember what the soil type was, but it's all very sandy. My recommendation is to let it regrow. It's my professional opinion, that's the best. My client has offered to go in and replant if necessary. Right now, there's no soil disturbance. You still have the root mass from all the things you have. You do have the chopped up mulch from the plants. That's my recommendation. If the commission wants some planting, my client is happy to do it. But it was my recommendation, and I appreciate other people's opinions.
So it wasn't tilled or rubbed
It wasn't
at all?
tilled. No, it was just mowed. And right now, stuff is leafing out about that high, and I know does grow, and we're in my foot tall by the 4th of July.
I think the one species that would concern me are any cedars that were maybe lost.
I didn't see evidence, up along this gentleman's property line, there could have been, but that was well out of the wetland. I was concentrating on the lower reaches and over on the abutting property. I didn't see a lot of evidence of trees being cut. There are some cedars in here. They did plant more cedars over here as a screening to this property. But I didn't see much evidence of any trees being cut.
I think it would be pretty obvious with the site visit.
Yeah, might be worth it.
Keep in mind too, and this is one of the wrinkles to this, is I think it's an easily sortable issue, is a lot of this work took place off of the locus here. So before we say, well, you have to replant, any plants on 137 or 135 or 133, one, it has to be a jurisdictional area for us, but two, we just can't order work done on someone's property without their permission, unless they are, a 137 you could, because they're obviously the violating party, but for the folks at 135 and 137 obviously need to be somewhat involved, and I'm glad they're all here to kind of go through it and say, well, we agree that this work needs to be done, and then you can order that done through the enforcement action. But they need to be involved and noticed and authorize that to happen, and have some level of comfort that it's going to happen correctly, and all of those things that are there. So this is a little more tricky than simply like, hey, you cut down the wetlands on your property, we're ordering them fixed, you have to do it. This is you spread out. So before that all gets done, I think we need to make sure that all the parties that are involved are comfortable with the path for restoration off locus, and then whatever on locus needs to be done.
Well, my opinion on that, I think you guys probably know, is that to let the established native plants that are, probably genotypes and, adapted to Nantucket compared to the things that come from nurseries, which may or may not be, probably not. We're much better off in the long run to let whatever was there grow back. In my experience with trying to reduce shrub cover by brush cutting and fire suggests that it takes a heck of a lot more than one cutting. You'd have to mow that thing every year for years to make a difference. So I think you're much better off to just let it grow back. In the long run, it's a much better solution. Now, any trees, that might be different for, especially things like junipers that aren't going to re-sprout.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you for the segue, Jeff.
Please.
Thank you for representing Pam Farkas, who owns 135 Pulpus Road. Like Prenny, she had no idea that this was going to happen. The first contact she had was the letter from Jeff informing her that there was a violation, and she is scrambling to get eyes on the ground. She's not yet returned to the island. She's due back fairly soon. We've had some conversation with Mr. Madden, and we will continue that. But she's very concerned about the trespass that has occurred here. She is willing to cooperate with the commission in finding a fix, whether it be the allowing the native vegetation to reestablish itself, or something a bit more aggressive on your client's property, perhaps a rain garden, or something that would deal with some of the water runoff in a constructive manner without further disturbing the resource area involved. At this point, we again would second the request for the continuance so we can learn more about it.
Okay.
So I did speak to Mr. Gifford yesterday, and we talked about it, and I did mention if the commission and the abutters do have concern about the drainage off the property, we could incorporate a rain garden somehow on our property that would slow the water down, but use only indigenous vegetation to go with it. But
okay.
I mean, I brought that up as a possibility. I don't think since when it does grow back, you're going to get the hydrologic characteristics back, except for the slightly steeper slope around the swimming pool and there is a patio around it. It's a dry-laid stone patio that's proposed, but you've got a steeper slope, a little bit more lawn, and right now you do have less vegetation there, but you still have the roots and all the mulch from the brush cutting, which is, I don't see any evidence or signs of runoff down there, but I'm happy to go out with the commission and take a look at it.
Well, keep in mind too, before we go traipsing all over, we'll need to make sure we secure permission to go on to 135 and 137, which we can do.
I can
but
speak to 135 right now. You have the owner's permission to go up and take a look at the fence line and the clear cut and whatever else is out there.
we can't trespass to look at someone else's trespass.
Yeah, date on the photo would be great. Find out the
February
date.
25th to March, there was 7 inches of rain in 2 days.
Obscene amount of rain, yeah.
Well, I don't know. I think the direction forward is pretty clear, and I'm just happy that everyone's kind of engaged and involved, so
Yeah.
we can know who everyone is and can kind of move through.
Yep. Well, we got another question here, so.
Hi, my name's Arthur Dwyer. I've worked with the Cassidys, and I was present, through the process of the HDC and the building permit that went through, and so when this project was proposed, there was no water in that wetlands area. We had noticed that the pond that was there, but we did have 3 nor'easters in a row, and that filled up with water after the 3 nor'easters. And in that nor'easter, the Cassidys had 4 pine trees that were over 30 feet tall. 2 of them were right up against the house, and 2 were in the yard. 3 of them went down, and that's what a lot of the chainsaw work was out there. Any of the cuttings on the pass were all done with machetes and the billy goat, small lawnmower.
Okay.
It's called a billy goat, and so none of those chainsaws or anything were used in any of that other work. Everything was either hand work or the billy goat. The only chainsaw work that did happen was after the 3 nor'easters, and we removed those pine trees.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Question? Okay. So, any other questions from the public? Brendan?
Chairman, just a question of procedurals with your group. A notice of intent, does that mean we intend on doing the following if we have permission? Or, all this brush cutting and everything else?
Well, this is
The work is to a great deal done.
Right, but it's
before it came to your auspices.
right. We'll correct the violation before we conditions for the violation before we approve anything on the pool. Yeah. Well, approval of the
Whatever's within jurisdiction. There's
Right.
certain things that are just not within jurisdiction. So I think part of that, and we can talk about it later, Brendan, if you want, but there's only so many different types of applications that the commission takes in. This just happens to be the one. Kind of what's happening simultaneously on a filing like this is they're filing an application to kind of regularize or normalize the work that was done and what going forward is permissible. The other process that's running with this that the commission will hold open until all of the permit conditions are done is the enforcement action that was filed against the property allows the commission to order work done to remedy any violation or damage that's there. And that's a completely separate process. And the kind of the past practice of the board is to get all of the work that would be permissible addressed and covered under a regular permit and then deal with any of the violations that come out as part of that process in that area. And that way they can properly order that work done and also maybe include some of that in the order, which is required to get recorded on the certificate of title. So if the property were to transfer or, everyone falls off the face of the earth, someone can go back and say, well, this is what was required to do. Oh, and this is why it was required to do it, where enforcement actions don't get directly recorded onto the title. So,
Okay, so if there are No more questions. You want to continue for 2 weeks?
Yes, please, and if I can get any feedback from the commission, if they want any additional information from us, if they, I'm happy to do it the next time.
Well, I think 2 weeks we'll have all sorts of other questions, possibly, so. Okay, so we'll continue for 2 weeks.
We do have to wait to see what natural heritage is.
Yeah. Okay, well, it's an interesting tentative 2 weeks. Okay. Dan, Michael, and Rebecca Bowman, Great Point Cottages.
For the applicant, Art Gasparo, for the Lohman family, I'm before you tonight with an application to upgrade 2 existing septic systems from old dilapidated cesspools to current Title V systems. A bit unusual of a project. These are the 2 cottages located out very close to Great Point. We are within the resource area, within the coastal dune mapped barrier beach area. There is also to the east a salt marsh and salt pond, which you can see I've located on the plan and shown a 100-foot buffer to. We are staying outside of that 100-foot buffer. And then we have an eroding coastal bank to the east as well. The project is essentially what we would consider to be maximum feasible compliance under Title V. There's obviously no expansion proposed of the structures. There's no real records for the old plan, for the old systems that are out there, plywood and block type system straight with a pipe. And so what we would be proposing to do would be abandon those systems and to install plastic septic tanks, which we can take out there in a pickup truck, plastic infiltrated chambers, do most of the work with a small size excavator, a little bit bigger than a mini, but essentially the small size excavator. We would replant any disturbed areas with American beach grass. We'd bring some plywood out there, try to stockpile some of the sand on the plywood to crawl over the plywood and then stockpile on it. There'll obviously be some disturbance. I've included photos for you of the area so that you can see, it's mostly low growth. It's a combination. There's some semi-shrubby type areas. We obviously want to minimize, any disturbance to the extent possible. And there's no electricity to these cottages, so that precludes the use of an IA system, which is why we're going with a conventional system as well. With no electricity, your water use is therefore limited. You don't have a well pump, so there is a hand pump, and then there's water that's brought out and put into the toilets, is the way the system currently functions. So overall, with a 1,500 gallon tank and seasonal use, I don't think these systems are really going to see, all that much infiltration. And then probably evaporation, out of the tanks over the season. But this is really to come into, we'll be going to Board of Health next, maximum feasible compliance, doing the best job that we really can in this situation. Two questions.
So, I think it's kind of obvious why you can't have a tight tank, because you wouldn't be able to pump it out, right?
That's right.
Huh?
Yeah, no one's going to be able to get out there. But it's also in the ocean too. It's not in the harbor.
Yeah, right. We're out next to the Sound. They're in between the Northwest Atlantic and the Sound, so we're well north. Past the galls of, from the harbor. So I think that the greatest resource area of concern would be the salt marsh, and I would bring to your attention the difference in elevation. I show the edge of the salt marsh down around elevation 1.5, and I've got the bottom of the trenches up at it's shown on the second sheet, but One of them's at 7.5, one of them's at 9.5. And again, the only reason is that is I have to maintain gravity flow. So I've held it as high as I could. And then the only reason that I even have to drop sort of the distance that I do is because there are the existing wells that may be used for potable water. I mean, for the most part, they bring water out there, but just in case, if someone was to drink out of that hand pumped well. So I lose a little bit of elevation with this pipe slope, but I've run everything at the minimum. So we're providing at least a 6-foot separation distance to the edge of that marsh vertically, plus the 100-foot horizontal separation distance, plus I think the overall limited use of volume based on the small cottages and not being able to really use that much water without electricity.
Better than what exists.
Yeah, I hear cesspool.
Yeah. Yeah. So, other questions? Okay. Any questions?
Any of the piping not be white PVC, so just black or green or something?
I mean, I suppose we might be able to look at SDR, which would be green, but I mean, you shouldn't really see any of the piping except for where it comes down out. I mean, Schedule 40 would be my recommendation.
I don't know if anyone else cares, but
just that pipe.
There's going to be two, right?
Oh, you mean the vent pipe? Sure, yeah, absolutely. Vent pipe, sure. We can come up with something. We can sand color them or spray. Yep, absolutely. Yep, that makes a lot. That makes good sense.
Okay. Questions from the public?
Some paint.
Oh, what's that?
You can always hit them with some paint.
Yeah, a little paint, a little cameo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Excuse me, Emily Molden for the Nantucket Land Council. I just wanted to ask, I know the narrative referenced a limit of work line. I know it's a pretty sensitive area, and I didn't see it on the plan. I was just wondering if there was a proposed limit of work line that could be identified just as far as the...
I can add that to the plan. I meant to add it. Essentially, the idea would be just to go over it with the commission. We will have to continue because natural heritage has 30 days and we can add it. But I looked at this when I was on the site, and so if I could just hold this up, we would come in this driveway along this side of this structure for this one, and we would come in this driveway and work right in here. And I will add, I didn't think we'd want to use siltation fencing, but perhaps some orange construction fencing or the like, and we can give you an updated plan.
Okay.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay. Okay, so if there are no other questions, would you like to continue for 2 weeks?
Yes, please.
Start. Okay. So we'll continue for 2 weeks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. The Frederick P. Mascioli Living Trust, 109 Baxter Road.
Couple extra times.
For the applicant, Art Gasparo, and I'm here along with Justine Kenny, who's the trustee of the property. And we're in front of you tonight with a notice of intent for a proposal for upper coastal bank stabilization. And what we're proposing to do, we're located out on the eastern side of Baxter Road, on the eroding coastal bank. We are north of the existing geotube installation at we're up at number 109 here, and we're proposing to install 2 rows of coir fiber logs, probably about 20% down from the top of the bank. The exact location would be sort of field determined, and we would place those 2 rolls horizontally along the face of the bank. We would anchor them with duckbill anchors and then wrap them with stainless steel cable and run the stainless steel cables back to helical anchors at least 25 feet back from the top of the bank. And then we would add sand fill over the top of the bank to rest essentially on the fiber rolls, and then to plant that fill with American beach grass. The house is a pre-78 structure. We are certainly nearing imminent danger. We have no reasonable alternative location on the property to relocate. This structure was already relocated and actually has a license from the town to be located within the Baxter Road layout. We realize this is somewhat of an unconventional application, though not completely without precedent. It's quite similar to what was approved down at number 93 Baxter Road, which has been successful in essentially stabilizing the upper portion of the bank and the ridge. What's happened, of course, here is that with the ongoing toe erosion, the bank becomes oversteepened, and then as the bank moves to reach its natural angle of repose, the top of the bank is continuing to erode and therefore threaten the structure. There is the pending SBPF application, which has been filed with you, but as I know you're all aware, is in negotiations with the select board and the town administration in terms of going forward. But ultimately, the hope of the applicant is that that application will proceed and will be successful in stabilizing the toe of this coastal bank. And as such, we see this as a interim measure to try to alleviate some of the ridge erosion that, like we say, is getting quite close to the structure. We do believe that the performance standards are met. We're not interfering with the ability of the coastal bank to contribute sediment. We're not impacting the ability of the bank to act as storm damage prevention. We're not impacting scenic wildlife views. And so with that, we do believe that it is a project that could be permitted by the commission. We are requesting as well to be able to install for safety purposes or essentially reinstall a split rail fence that would run along the top of the bank a few feet back. And with that, we'd be happy to try to address questions or concerns that you may have with the application.
Well, a question I have is what happens if this is an interim measure? What happens if the Sconset Beach Preservation Fund project does not go forward? Will this come out or?
Yes, I think that we're going to have to be subject to monitoring this installation and maintenance in terms of tightening the cables against the bank. What's going to happen naturally if the toe is not protected is that it will continue to erode and the sand is going to, continue to sluice out from below. So this isn't something that's going to, stop or, protect the structure, if you will, on a long-term basis. I think what we're looking to do is to hope for the best in terms of the permitting, and then this would have to be revisited as part of ongoing monitoring. And like I say, I think that you would have, what we would do is we would retension those cables to the anchors each year, and or install new anchors if need be, if you had a particularly serious erosion year, perhaps like this year, where that sand sluiced out, and then just trying to hopefully slow the loss of the ridge by adding the additional sort of, it's not really the rolls, which are, I think, slowing the rate of erosion of the ridge. It's the additional sand that we're going to add and trying to not have the ridge come back to that natural rate. But if we just were to, the bank is so high, it would take an enormous volume of sand and without any toe protection to artificially create that natural angle of repose. So the idea is to try to create it at the upper portion of the bank, subject to annual monitoring, and maintenance and reporting to the commission, and then see where the other application goes.
Plus the adding of the vegetation.
We would plant it with beach grass.
So it's a great
I wonder about planting something with a little more substantial root system at the top of the bank, like switchgrass or, some kind of a prairie grass, like switchgrass or little blue stem or something that would have probably a deeper and more extensive root system than lawn grass. I don't know, what do you think, Ben?
Yeah, American beach grass, I think would root pretty deep. But
American beach grass would be good too for
Well, that's what they planted 2004 plants.
Well, I'm talking about where your yard is now.
Oh, yeah.
Right to the edge of the bank.
Yes.
And that was planted with beach grass as well. Just plug it into the grass, I guess.
Does that have to be part of the permit?
It would be, yeah.
That's fine.
We could, I think that's good advice, and we will ultimately need to continue this. The file number was not issued. There was some delay in the mail and receiving the lockbox check. So
about how far down the bank will these tubes be?
I think they're going to be about 20 feet or so, 15 to 20 feet down from the top. We're trying to, I think, fit into the sort of where there is a bit of a change in slope from more vertical at the top, and then it does start to slope down a little bit. I think that we would need some a bit of leeway, and then to show them as an as-built condition exactly where they are.
It's hard to determine.
We would stake both property lines. The project's about 165 feet long or so, and I think that again, this would all be done by hand labor. Obviously, there's not going to be any machines down on the bank. A small machine would be used to drill the helical anchors. And again, the idea of to also meet the protected interest of the commission, the helical anchors and the cables which are coming back are not necessarily to provide support to the overall system, but to prevent the loss of those rolls to the marine environment if you had a lot of erosion that actually, now between the duckbill anchors, I think that it would be hung up there, but then you essentially could get them out of there if we really needed to. And I think that we're just trying to do essentially the best we can with a situation where there is something already pending at the toe of the bank, which between the town-owned land portion of things, the pending SBPF application, the owner and I have talked in terms of alternatives analysis, whether we would look at something more substantial partway down the bank in terms of coastal engineering structures and qualifying. We feel that the best alternative in terms of meeting the interest of the commission, given the other application, is to come in with this sort of a soft, see what we can try to do at the top to just slow the settling back of that bank, because it is threatening the structure.
When I was looking at this,
I have a question. I would like to see accurate cross sections before we approve this, and so that's my input.
What are accurate cross sections?
Showing the slope, actual slope from the top down.
As opposed to graphic.
Well, I've been out there, and so I realize it varies substantially.
Yeah.
But I would like to see a number of accurate cross sections so that we know what we're dealing with going forward. I have a feeling that it's going to end up being suspended, and so I think it would be a help to decide what we want to do in the future, because I assume that the applicants will be back in front of us again.
Okay.
My only thought on this is, and with all due respect to you, Art, on the design of it, but it seems like if you're anchoring it on top and then you're filling with sand, if you had a big event where it really scoured out underneath, you have a catastrophic loss at the top of this thing.
That certainly concerns me as well, and that's why I've tried to run the anchors all the way back to the back property line. My thinking on that, it is an unconventional design, is that essentially what I think is more likely to happen is as there's erosion of the toe, we don't have anything that's actually stopping the sand behind it. It's just gonna sluice out from underneath, and the rolls are likely to be suspended. But I share the concern, and that's why I spaced the anchors. I mean the cables at I think about 25 feet apart, and then I ran them all the way back. When I started this drawing, that was part of my engineering progression, was to try to get them, because the last thing we would want, obviously, is a pulling of the bank, or to create. And I also staggered them. You notice that they're not in a row, thinking that we didn't want to create a failure plane along that same.
Yeah, similar. I was just thinking if that did slump, the cables would cut and then you would lose that tension. So you may want to think of something at the top of the bag. No, you know what I mean?
It'll cut into the overhead.
Unless you put tubes around them to try and dissipate the pressure.
We support them underneath so that they don't do that.
Art?
Yes.
Are you doing cross sections of basically where the cables are going? So that would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 cross sections though.
I'll look at it and get you some information.
Can I ask a few questions?
Please.
So, Art, I am just wondering if these, and I know some of this will be done in the field, but that foundation had become exposed. If these cables are going to have to be moved, because it concerns me that if they started to pull, and then that foundation starts to go, that could be really bad.
Yeah, the foundation, the existing foundation up there, it is a concern. The debris, what might happen as a result of that, and we're in a bit of a catch-22 that if we were to remove the foundation, we're going to destabilize the top of the bank. At the same time, we have the problem of the debris, and again, this the current owner sort of inherited that situation. I don't even know if you knew the foundation was there. It just became exposed. So we will have to run the cables in such a way to not go, over that foundation.
So you can locate that on the next plan.
Yeah, I'll add that to the plan. The walls that became exposed, as well as the current top of bank. This top of bank, it's not that it's not, it's just that I would add that this was I dated on the plan March 16th. So, in 2 months there has been, I don't think there's been any significant toe erosion events since then, but there's been exactly what we're talking about, is that, the loss of some of the top with the wind and rain erosion as it, moves towards its natural angle.
And then I'm also concerned about maybe seeing a construction protocol, because I'm just wondering how they're going to get these bags down here, because it looked like the top of the bank had enough undermining that they'd have to destabilize or almost remove portions of the top of bank.
There will need to be an access point. That's I think that they would try to minimize it, but we have a contractor that we've been speaking with, so I think that is a good point. I had him, I actually developed this design in consultation with him, because I think that this is fairly unusual, and I needed to be sure that, he could do it. And he felt confident that he could. But I think that your point is well taken, and we'll meet with him, and I'll identify on the plan sort of where and how specifically he proposes to go about that. And we did talk about the sand delivery likely being by conveyor, because obviously you can only get so close to the edge there. So you would set up a conveyor and then move it along, and then the guys there'd be some hand work of moving that sand around to the extent that they can. It's going to be it's a logistically challenging project for sure.
And I also have to say, I wonder if the toe here was maybe a little bit sand starved from having a structure right next door that was uncovered for close to a month.
I'm not following.
So we have the bluff installation right here.
Oh.
Right. So
well, that's not next door. I mean, it's hundreds of feet away. I can get you the distance. I mean, I can show it, but it's certainly not like an abutting.
Right. It's not right next door. So I guess I misspoke there. It's within viewable distance that you'd think sand would be moving around there.
Right. I mean, are there clay knobs coming out of this area?
Sure,
there are hardened faces.
There is variation in the naturally occurring soil down at those lower levels. There's without a doubt it varies. You move 20, 30 feet, and then you've got some of those ice contact glacial deposits and some of the clay, and then it goes back to sandy areas, and it's certainly reflected in the when you look at the natural slope of the bank and how over in perhaps this area it's sort of steep at the bottom, and back in here you really have to really sort of dig into a real study to, I think, identify that, which I think does go a little bit beyond what we're trying to do, just at the top.
It does give some ideas.
The point is that I assume the fill you're going to use is going to end up on the beach, and so it really should mimic what is coming out of the bluff there.
Yeah, standard matching.
Yes, certainly.
Yeah.
We agree that we would be, talking about bank compatible material, essentially, and we would be following the same protocol that we would be, proposing that the sand would be delivered from either the Holgate or the Reese sand pits. And while there is variation in the bank, I think from observation, it's predominantly sandy material.
Mm-hmm.
And you are planting this with beach grass. So then they'd be subject to the same, is it like 75% lift?
Yeah, I mean, you could certainly condition some sort of survivability. I mean, I think these are a little bit more interesting just for the fact that survivability has been tied more on structures that are known to be harder structures or more stable structures. I mean, I think this would be more of a having to have it replanted and not having necessarily a time where you go and, you go through a growing season with nothing planted on it. I mean, I think I understand the condition that you'd be looking to do, but I don't think it would be worded like you see on the other like pre-grown core arrays that are more fixed in place. But it's certainly something that, I mean, you could definitely puzzle out some language for that, for sure.
I think very much want to have their beach grass survive on this.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
Not to have it survive.
That's the goal. And the goal is stable vegetation to the extent possible and for as long as possible.
Would you be irrigating?
Yes.
Okay.
But we have a system already in.
Yes, the hoses are sticking out of them.
Yeah, those old tube, irrigation tubes, once we have a guy down there, would all be cut and removed. It's the foundation, I think, that's a concern. Greater challenge.
Yeah, there's footings attached to that too, so there's some concrete.
I think the pieces that are there that are exposed are going to have to get knocked down, and then we'll have to clean them up from the beach.
I would think you'd have to be pretty careful irrigating these lawns. You don't want to over irrigate so you have water starting to flow out over to the bank. That's just going to exacerbate your problems.
In this particular case, if I may, you'll note that I included a lot of spot elevations, and the predominant slope was all back away from that bank. As you may recall, it was just from the site visit. You got to walk up. You can't even see over, so you get to that sort of precarious point.
Yeah.
So we're always sensitive to that, but I don't.
So that's a plus.
Yeah, I don't think you'll have runoff. And I understand we don't want to over irrigate, but I think that the viability of the beach grass plantings is certainly, dependent on having, a zone with spray heads that would, go over the top of the bank, or likely be set maybe just below the top to be sure that we spray the plantings. And those would be on the, on a timer for regular watering.
The other question I have is swallow habitat. And, you can't tell if there were birds in there previously now because it's eroded so much. There's just, any evidence would be gone. But it does appear to be, quite good swallow habitat. That's what they like, those vertical faces.
Overhang.
Yeah, not far below the top. And I wonder if a couple of possibilities would be to leave a little bit of the top without the beach grass on it, just a couple of feet. But that may not be enough room. I just wonder if they would look at the fiber rolls as basically top of bank and just start going in
That's what I
below
thought,
fiber
that
rolls.
it
But
invited new habitation.
Yeah, there definitely wasn't
Yeah,
anything
it's a lot more
noticeable.
unconsolidated down there, though. Might be hard.
yeah, it is. It is.
Do you have an idea what the slope will be from the top of bank to the top of rolls? It
No, not
varies.
exactly.
Yeah.
I really don't. I mean, we're really just trying to. That's difficult to predict.
Yeah.
I mean, it undulates, so I
Mhm.
don't think that it would be exactly the same. Again, with the threatened structure, we're just sort of trying to to essentially do the best we can to slow that ridge, and I think the fill is going to run from the top of the rolls to the top of the bank, and where it sort of sits along that. Again, we're only talking about a 20-inch roll, so
it's
the
not
overall
gonna get that much
change, it's
steep,
not like
no.
we can really change it all that much.
So you're gonna probably have some exposed top of bank.
I think so.
Yeah.
I don't think you'd be able to hold a slope that's gonna come all the way up to the very top.
Yeah.
Then if we have irrigation heads right there.
Right
I mean,
there.
no bird's gonna nest. Let's be real.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Other questions? Okay. Do we have any questions from the public?
I'm David J. Kenny. I am the co-trustee of the Shirley Family Trust. I am mandated by the laws of the state of Massachusetts to preserve the property under question. And I hope that becomes a matter of record for all of you.
That's good. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
If the commission doesn't need anything further, we would like to request a continuance for 2 weeks, and we'll work on getting you some updated plans and try to address some of the questions and comments that were raised tonight.
Okay. We'll continue for 2 weeks then.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.
Good. Where am I? Oh, yeah. 273 Hummock Pond Road, Nominee Trust. 273, 281 Hummock Pond Road.
Good afternoon, Mark Ritz from Site Design, representing the applicants at 273 and 281 Hummock Pond Road. The project before you today is a request to shuffle a bunch of buildings around and, in essence, move them all further away from the resource area. We have two structures, the main house, which we are calling Building A, and a secondary dwelling called Building B that are very close to the seaward side and the coastal bank. We are proposing to move those structures landward on the property outside of jurisdictional areas. The relocated cottage will go here outside the 100-foot buffer. Relocated main structure will go here outside the 100-foot buffer. We also have a third building, a studio, that is on the north side of the property. Its current location is here. We are proposing to move it further down the property to accommodate the other building moves. We're also proposing to relocate an existing pervious roadway that runs through the middle of the property. We're going to shift it a little bit to the north. It will be outside the 25-foot buffer. This is a driveway which services 2 or 3 houses down at the other end of the road further down. So we're moving from here up to here just to get it away from where we're relocating the houses to. And you guys have seen this property before. The last time we requested this move, we ran out of time. It didn't happen. The resource areas haven't really changed significantly, except on the pond side. With the increased flood elevation, we didn't have a bank on pond side before. Now we have a jurisdictional coastal bank because the 100-year flood now comes up onto the slope instead of stopping at the bottom. So we've got a top of bank, and our buffers have all moved about 25 feet landward from where they were on the previous filing.
So, what's the reason for moving this driveway so close to the top of the bank?
Because of
Mainly to accommodate houses, septic components, and other items. Basically just to accommodate moving buildings and septic further away from resource areas.
Yeah, that was my concern. What exists on that? I mean, you're running here to an old property, so that was all disturbed. But what is this area here?
It's primarily beachgrass bayberry. The usual sort of, it's all maintained probably about a maximum of knee height.
Mm-hmm.
Low shrubby vegetation.
So Mark, we're on the top of the bank, how high did the water get this year in the pond compared to the top of the bank?
I'm not sure, but the top of the bank here is elevation around 15. So it didn't go anywhere near the top. It's just the old jurisdictional floodplain used to be at the toe of the bank, and then in the 2014 mapping, it moved up, I think, 2 feet or so, or 2 or 3 feet, which put us intersecting the bank. So now we've got that DEP policy coastal bank. But I don't think that this year's flooding, we've got about a 15-foot. The shoreline that we had at the time the survey was done about a year ago was down at elevation 8, even lower, down at elevations 3 to 4, and our bank, top of bank, is up at 15. So we've got 10, 12 feet of.
Well, it had about 3 or 4 feet more elevation this winter than it did. But I've never seen it this full.
So it was probably up the slope a ways, but not anywhere near the top yet.
So Mark, I'm sort of with Ashley on this one. It seems like you have a ton of room to keep that proposed driveway out of the 50.
We could pull that a little bit south.
It's like I know you probably.
Yeah, we can pull it a little bit to the south if that will make a big difference for the board.
Quite a bit.
I think it'd be much better.
Where are the leach fields on this, or is this pumped? What is this?
The existing leach fields are here, and we're going to have one system here, one system here. We're going main system here, reserve area here.
I was looking all around at something small. I didn't see that. Yeah, it's kind of like you got the pump chambers way over here, and
we've got it. Well, we've got
we know it's in there.
Because we have another existing structure here that's staying. There are a total of 4 on the property, and we're moving 3 around.
Okay. And then, are you proposing to revegetate with some beach grass to try and stabilize that top of bank?
Currently, the 25-foot buffer is completely vegetated, and we're planning to leave it as is. And all of this is currently lawn area, and we are, our intent is to leave it as it is currently as lawn area.
Okay. Maybe you could revegetate just up there then.
Yeah, we can revegetate that little section of the 25-foot.
So I think ultimately what's going to save this property is having that area vegetated to try and slow or stabilize any erosion that might happen.
It'll certainly help.
Other questions?
Is this the property that's a steel? Okay.
I was wondering if anybody would remember that.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I was going to ask if no one else was, so.
Yeah, I mean,
Yes,
where's that as far as the bank?
that's a little over 100 feet landward of the bank.
They were smart in their installation.
Yeah, that's
It was about 110,
it's amazing.
115 when it was put in.
Or it just sneaks in between the 200s is the really important
So it's in this
part.
general area?
Yes, it's in this general area.
Could that be shown on
Yes,
the
we should
plan?
probably show that on the plan and memorialize it, but
Yeah, that-
It's outside our
Is it-
jurisdiction.
it's
Not jurisdictional.
I don't know.
soon we might be able to locate it.
It's a geologic feature now. Yeah. Okay. Do we have any questions?
I think that's a really good point, and it doesn't have to be within our jurisdiction to be put on the plan.
Right. There's plenty of things on the plan that aren't in our jurisdiction.
Well, but I'm not sure that there's a requirement for that, or is there, Jeff?
We'll look into it.
No, but at the same time, if we're moving stuff around, it might be kind of nice to know where things are.
It's a major structure on the property.
Don't like.
I mean, we know it's there, so. Okay. Do we have, like I said, any questions from the public on this one? Okay. Any more questions from the board? Okay, Jeff, we have everything we need to close on this?
are we gonna go?
Oh, well, no, we're gonna get a new setup, right, thank
I'll
you.
give you a revised
A
plan.
new revised plan with the movement of the road would be great.
Movement of the road. And the-
Thank you.
No, we do have a file number, but
But
I'd like
we're waiting
to
for
see the
Heritage.
plan.
Let's see a plan where
Yeah.
the road moved. So that's one more.
Well, yeah, that'd be good. Could
Yeah,
we
and
continue?
in terms of Heritage, this went through a separate review process with Heritage.
Oh, that's right.
And
Sorry.
it was approved. We are at or near the expiry of that, so we have submitted this to them for additional review, as, again, a separate ongoing review. But just that said, the original move that they approved had a significantly greater impact to their mapped habitat than this one does. On this one, we're really just this area is within their habitat, so we anticipate that they're going to look at this favorably as part of their separate review process. And we'll get you a revised plan with the relocated driveway and some infill planting. Where were we? Right here on the 25.
Great. Yeah, sorry about that.
No problem.
Okay, so 2 weeks?
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, so we'll continue. 2 weeks time.
There, can I just say, sorry, there's one more location, right, for some infill planting right in here too, right? Because this is gonna be relocated, and that's past the 25?
The dashed red is the 25. Yeah, so we can fill into that area as well. This section here.
Okay.
Amended orders of conditions.
Couldn't wait here.
Vicky M. Stansel Trust, 12 North Road.
Well, you know what? You probably didn't have to.
Good afternoon. Stan Humphries with LEC and Seth Wilkinson with WED. As you recall on the site at 12 North Road, there's a series of timber terraces, and a lot of the work that was proposed by Seth's shop was to come in with 6 rows of 20-inch fiber logs. I'm sorry, Ken Dale also, please. And it's come to the engineer's attention as well as Seth's attention that the anchoring proposed for the core fiber logs would intersect those timber, or that lowest timber wall. So we're proposing to substitute biodegradable materials in the form of the sand-filled envelopes. Have 2 2x4 rows that would substitute for the proposed or the approved coconut fiber logs. What that also does is change our protocols in construction so that materials and the labor can come overland and down to this area. We don't need a barge to move in any equipment or any materials. So we don't have to worry about the impacts to the offshore area, from the shore, grass, shellfish, that sort of thing.
What's your? Go ahead, Ashley.
Are you going to dump sand over the bluff to fill these things then?
For the record, Seth Wilkinson, the sand would come down a chute from the top of the bank from the landscaped area, but inside of a pipe or a chute, and right into, basically when you're building envelopes, you set up a little temporary plywood jig to form the envelope, and the sand would go right into the jig with it encapsulated.
And does this, I can't recall if you had plants growing in the original.
Same planting protocol.
Same planting
yeah,
protocol.
everything's the same. It's
Yeah.
just sand fill envelopes. It's same dimensions, really different. Not 6 rolls, but covering with like 2 pancake envelopes, which is what they do naturally. I'm sure you've seen that. But it'll spread over the same area and have the same exact planting spectrum. The only real difference is that it won't have the anchoring, which would conflict with these. We found a number of original construction images in the legal file, mostly after the hearing was over, and we investigated with the engineer and saw the conflict and didn't want to compromise that steep bank, so I thought this was the best alternative. And I'm not a huge advocate of sand fill envelopes because of the rapid deflation that we've been seeing in the recent frequency of storms, but these being so high, we really don't have that concern here. I mean, even with this last winter, I checked that site after storms, it would have barely touched the bottom of these envelopes, so I don't think you'd have deflation. Deflation really happens when the top pulls the water, pulls the sand, liquefies sand, pulls it through. So I think they'd be pretty long lasting here. And it avoids all that, the concern that the commission had with the access, which you would have just needed to do via the water or the other approach.
I'm just wondering, I think because of the schematic, are you going to continuously need to recover these to keep sand on them? Like, it just looks like it would want to lose sand and just have these 2 envelopes looking hideous on the bank kind of constantly.
Yeah, it is hard to really need 3 dimensions to accurately illustrate that, but the slope angle would be the same, and we're able to keep it's always the water that takes the sand off of the fibrils for the most part, so this is a comparable slope. And without water, the elevation that would have to come to would be, I think, above the 100-year flood to get up over the top and bring it down. So to answer your question, I don't believe so. And we also, unlike a lot of contractors, we actually vegetate our envelopes, got a good track record of that. So I think most people going by will not notice and know what's under the sand. Just look very straight.
It doesn't seem to increase environmental impacts.
No.
So it's different, but
Yeah, it's fundamentally the same, right? It's the same planting and stuff. That's what I was. That was my concern about it. Whether
Right.
planted the same way.
And you're not trying to plant right up behind the bulkhead, where the stone is, which seems to fail so many times on these projects. Yeah.
And I recall from the engineer, he felt that really needs to be rocky so that can because if you get too much hydraulic load behind there, that could put too much pressure.
Too much load on it.
Any other questions?
So I have a question because I thought the stone that had been put in there illegally was going to be removed. It shows the existing stone to remain on the cross section.
The incompatible stone was removed actually in consultation with staff through the enforcement order during the hearing process before it closed. Otherwise, the plans remain the same as how it was approved originally. We're not proposing to change that aspect of the project at all.
Right. The original design was with stone. Yeah. When it was built.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Yep. Thank you. Okay. No questions from the public? Do you have any recommendations on this one?
Well, if you guys are ready, you can close an issue, or you can just close and discuss, or however you wish.
I would move to close and issue the amended order.
Do you have a second? Oh, okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Oh, we got to go through the roll call. Commissioner
Voting aye.
Harrison, aye.
Bennett, aye.
LaFleur, aye.
Shampoo, aye.
Steinhauer, aye.
Chopper line.
Okay, passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Appreciate it.
Pretty straightforward. Diane Metalone, 14 Western Ave.
Ryan Maxwell with Bracken Engineering. An amended order, an order of conditions was issued to this property in January of last year, and that work included raising the existing house and putting in a full basement, replacing the decks in place, and installing a new septic system. All of that work has been completed, aside from, I think, like revegetating the coastal bank there. But what we'd like to do now is amend the order to include removing the existing timber retaining wall and replacing it with a dry-laid stone wall. The wall is gonna take up the same footprint, same length.
It'll be a little taller, won't it?
Yeah, a little taller. So at this sort of awkward trapezoidal deck spot there, it gets a little steep, so they'd like to bring in a little fill to level off that area. I think at most it was going to be a foot of increased height.
Questions, concerns? No, none from me.
So are you gonna fill behind that wall then, or will it just be above the,
There will be fill behind the wall.
You're gonna add additional fill then too?
Yep, to sort of level off the area.
Yeah. Okay. No questions from the public on this one? Straightforward. Jeff, we have everything you need?
Yes.
On this one? Recommending closing?
I would move to close.
Issue?
Issue the amended order of conditions.
Second. All those in favor? Commissioner Gold?
Erickson, aye.
Bennett, aye.
Fleur, aye.
Shampoo, aye.
Steinhauer, aye.
Passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Okay. Minor mods. 36 Lily Street LLC, 3636B Lily Street.
Brian Madden from LEC, representing the applicant 36 Lily Street LLC. The order of conditions was issued back in November this past year, and the primary dwelling in the studio went back before HCC and recently just got approved. So the plans before you just recognize those minimal updates, and the proposed structural footprints are outside the 50-foot buffer zone, and all other elements associated with the project, foundation type, the restoration plantings, rain garden, bed storage, and all the driveway details all remain the same. It's just updating the structural footprints on number 36 based on the HCC approval. Proposed on 36B has not yet received HCC approval. In the interim, before that happens, I think they'll just rehab the building. But other than that, everything else remains the same.
So this is just for 36?
Yeah, but they were lumped together, so.
Well, yeah. Okay. Questions?
Seems pretty minor.
The consent? We have.
Yes, you mentioned rehabbing the building, so they'd be coming before us to rehab the building?
I think it's just kind of like, it's not changing the footprint or anything like that.
More aesthetics?
Yeah, just.
HEC aesthetics?
Yeah. I mean, it's an older building, so.
Yeah.
Molden for the Nantucket Land Council. My only question was that the minor mod plan doesn't seem to show the land subject to flooding, and just because that's a resource area under the local bylaw, I just thought since the minor mod plan will likely now become the more final plan of record, that resource area should be on there too. I don't know if that's true or not. Jeff can chime.
No, they kind of work in tandem. They're both still referenced as the plans of record.
Okay.
So
that's still on
correct.
file.
Yeah, because this plan won't get recorded.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, so the record plan in the actual recorded version will always say, it's the one kind of weird part of minor mod plan changes is that
Okay.
this doesn't get recorded. So the plan of record, unless you come pull the file, will remain the original plan.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Well, in that case,
I won't say it's a flaw in the system. It's a little flaw.
just wanted to make sure that it was still going to be in the mix.
And that's why we did put the note on there that just references the order of conditions in the original plan for more of that restoration.
Right. Okay. Great.
We just try to simplify this file.
Definitely.
Okay.
leaves
Thank you.
Room for confusion.
Oh, please put more lines on it.
I actually got to say this plan isn't too bad for
No,
me.
it's not. It's not.
There are way worse plans for lines
For a
than this
black
thing.
and white
Oh,
print.
God, yeah.
Okay. So no more questions. Jeff, you have a recommendation for this one?
I'd say this is pretty much a classic minor modification.
Okay.
I really don't even like the term minor modification for a plan change. It's a nice plan change.
Addition of the minor mod.
Second.
All those in favor?
Yes.
Oh, wait, no. Commissioner Golding?
Goldie and a classical I.
Classical aye.
I don't know what that means.
Aye.
Bennett, aye.
The floor, aye.
Shampoo, aye.
Steinauer, aye.
Topham, aye.
Passes unanimous.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Stealing my plans though.
Certificates of compliance. Oh, continued. That first one, good. Okay. 78 Millbrook Road.
Right, 78 Millbrook Road was for the construction of a pool and patio, some landscaped areas, and then the upgrade and replacement of the existing septic system. Everything is done in compliance, everything's revegetated, everything's stabilized. I would say we could issue the certificate of compliance.
Move to issue certificate.
Second.
Okay.
Do you have a second?
Commissioner Golding?
Aye.
Commissioner Arisman?
Aye.
Commissioner Bennett, aye.
The floor, aye.
Shampoo, aye.
Steinauer, aye.
Topham, aye.
Passes unanimously. Thank you very much.
Oh, I gotta pass that around though. I'm napping on the job there.
Lauren Brock, 17 Nantucket Road.
All right, this was for the construction of an addition on an existing.
My signature, Ashley.
Oh.
No, we didn't hear that. That's okay. We'll leave it blank. We got enough. Your vote will be memorialized forever. Don't need to go through forgery today. So 70 Nantucket Road is for an addition on an existing dwelling. There's some other site work on the lot outside of jurisdiction, but it's been completed and it's actually a pretty old order and it's expired, but it's in compliance. So I'm going to issue it as well.
Okay. Let's make that motion.
Yep, moved issue.
Do we have a second? Okay. Commissioner
Aye.
Arisman, aye.
Bennett, aye.
The floor, aye.
Shampoo, aye.
Steinauer, aye.
Topham, aye.
That passes unanimously. Thomas R. and Janice M. Dougherty, 10 Moores End Lane.
I'll just leave out parts of this project, but there was a minor mod for this for adding on to the patio and retaining wall. But the original order of conditions was for. Where did it go? You never put it on the old ones. It was for the construction of the house and landscaping and things around it. And then they did a minor mod to add on a patio and retaining wall onto the back of the house. But it's all built in compliance. It's kind of the long story short, and it's long expired as well, and I could recommend that we could issue that minor modification. Minor certificate of compliance.
Second.
All those in favor? Commissioner Golding?
Goldie, aye.
Arisman, aye.
Bennett, aye.
The floor, aye.
Shampoo,
This
aye.
one meeting, I get all out of sorts.
Okay, that one passes unanimously. Love it. William Rafferty, Mark A. Quigley, 74A Nantucket Road.
Yep, so this is the one, there are a number of these lots together, but it's the first one that's been completed. It was for the construction of, on the locust, there's a construction of a house, a guest house, and a pool, only a portion of which everything is within jurisdiction. I believe the front house is actually outside of jurisdiction. It's just the back dwelling. Again, it was built in compliance with the plan of record. And then the other lot was across the street. So you can kind of see that the proposal is the 100 just clips the pool. And the second dwelling was outside of 50. And then on the front is where they have the septic outside of the 100 from the wetland across the road. But again, it was constructed in compliance. And everything is revegetated with no loose soils around. And recommend that one be issued as well.
Issue. Second.
All those in favor? Commissioner Golding?
Golding, aye.
Harrisman, aye.
Bennett, aye.
LaFleur, aye.
Shampoo, aye. Steinauer, aye.
Topham, aye.
Pass it unanimously. Thank you. Okay, orders of conditions.
Take my best down. All right, sorry, Ian, I don't have any drafts for you for this because I have a hard copy here. But
Okay, so, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
thanks, Ian. All right. All right, no more roll call votes.
Okay. Goes pretty quick. So the first one is 4850 Tennessee Ave, Nantucket Land Bank.
Yeah, this was we closed this one tonight. This was the case doc.
Yep.
It's so weird saying chase dock because it feels like it's doing something.
Do they not need waivers to work in this area?
It's a water dependent use. So we have specific performance standards that address docks and piers.
Okay.
But good question.
That was long. All right, so the idea is to get this thing as high as possible, right? That's where you get the most environmental.
So, so right now the design is that the bottom structural element will be 3 feet off of the marsh at a minimum, and that the dock itself is 3 feet wide.
So the bottom structural element, even the cross brace, so that means that.
Well, the cross brace is not, but the actual stringers have to be. The cross bracing and the pilings are, I don't want to say they're exempted from that requirement, but it's essentially whatever stringers and decking, that lowest part of that has to be, by their plans, 3 feet at a minimum off of the marsh. So it may go above in sections as the marsh undulates, but that's. That is their plan requirement.
That is their whose plan requirement?
The
natural area.
Well, that's how the land bank designed it and was approved by DEP.
Yeah. Okay.
For their Chapter 91 laws.
So they're good with 3 feet. They wouldn't want it 4 feet.
Well, I think
they'd want it 10 feet if they could get it.
Like you said, I think they would prefer it. I think they would
make it a moving sidewalk.
They'd prefer it as high as possible, but I think there's also
they're okay with 3 feet. So they're okay with 3 feet.
There's an aesthetic that I think they also think about as well.
Exactly. Okay.
That'd be awesome though, like a 10-foot high
cable.
Gondolas.
An elevator.
That would be easy.
Gondola over the marsh to a float.
Sandwich boardwalk.
I still want a giant water slide from the top of the bluff down into the water. So tempting.
You can condition it.
It's pretty permissible.
Water dependent.
Well, you would have to demonstrate how a water slide protects the interests.
Yeah.
But you could give it a go. You can talk in circles about a lot of things.
Oh boy. I have a late meeting.
If the meeting goes long enough and everyone gets punchy, you might be able to.
It's just the room is emptying out.
Yeah, well, so I guess we would move the issue as drafted then.
I would second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously.
I do appreciate the study Rachel found for us.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was pretty cool.
I actually thought it was kind of lucky. I actually know, spoken with John Logan a few times out of the DMF. It's kind of amazing that it's nice to get studies too that aren't. It's unbiased in the sense that the government put it together and funded it to do. There's no interest that's like, hey, we're trying to do all these docks this way, and lo and behold, they're good. No, it's the Division of Marine Fisheries had been getting a lot of these requests and started to actually look into it and have been able to put together a publication-worthy study on the impacts of them.
I mean, this sort of changes their thinking, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, Margaret T. Cunningham, trustee.
All right, so this one, I apologize that this is the one that I missed last time, but it is the Wilkinson style array. So let's set this in here every time I have to say that. The Wilkinson style array that site design put the application in for 103 and 105. Just from the notes that Joanne took from me last time, this matches a lot of our same Wilkinson style applications with a few exceptions. There's a new condition 35, which is the applicant shall provide work logs anytime machinery is used on the beach or when sand is delivered to the site. So there was kind of a comment that people were interested in about the amount of efforting for maintenance. So if the intent of that, and usually work logs just kind of documents, we used a skid steer for 4 hours and hand labor for 10 hours, and usually detail it that way for that work to happen. There's another change on this one. There's so many conditions on these ones. I think it was in a finding. Oh, I think it was in 23 that the yearly report shall include a total amount of the sand placed and its placement in relation to established vegetation. Or something that we've added in recently.
Because this one, am I remembering correctly that he really wasn't sure about the total nourishment for the year? Like maybe his estimate was under what the bank was delivering, but then there was potential to like double it.
Right.
These are all blending together.
I know.
I missed the discussion last time and just got to watch it on
It's just going on yearly averages. Yeah.
Right.
Right.
Which they should have to maintain.
Right. So, but there was some discussion about not overloading it
because of the offshore.
Right.
Well, I think the way that we've prevented against overloading is you get that as built originally that says this is what the structure looks like and this is the volume, and then on that first annual report, I think that's when that's filed. The volume that's there needs to be addressed. That's when you can essentially say, well, we need to adjust the volume that's here, and you can apply to amend or modify, or you can simply kind of order the change or say you do or you don't. I mean, you have kind of the flexibility with the reporting. So you're not, it's kind of you kind of have the say about whether or not that seems to be happening.
Right.
Otherwise, Jeff, this is pretty much standard orders for these projects.
Yeah, I would be lying if I told you that most of these don't start. I usually take the order from the one we've previously permitted and open that up and then change the information at the top No, I didn't even control C it. I just changed the information at the top and save as, then make adjustments from discussions as we need to, and kind of have a rolling. I mean, I have a note that I keep to myself that says which one of these was the most recent filing. So when we get back to the office, that I will cross off the one that's there and go to 103 and 105 Eagle Point Road. And I do it for, do I want to make it sound like it's only for this one? I keep a list, it's on my computer, of there's one with like pools, there's one with invasive species, and I just kind of keep them running because they kind of all build. So if I went back and pulled like whatever SE48, 2700, if that was one of these, the order will look different. You'll go, wow, we forgot a ton of stuff. It's kind of slowly built, so.
It's an evolving template.
Yeah, they are. I mean, I feel like every time there's a condition that gets added or something else comes up, or there's always the site specifically have some sort of unique quirk that you're trying to deal with separately. But it saves me a lot of typing to go through and pull them out.
Understood. In that case, since I think the improvements were improvements, we should issue as drafted.
Second.
There we go.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously.
I will say the one exception to that are the Scots orders. Those always get written kind of uniquely. They are always something unique.
Town of Nantucket, 54 Low Beach Road.
All right, this is the demo of that terrifying building out by the beach.
Foundation gets exposed.
Yep, so out of 20, should any part of the foundation get exposed, it will be removed by the applicant.
They weren't really proposing to revegetate. Were they just wanted to let it revegetate naturally? Were they going to plant beach grass?
No, I think originally they wanted to just kind of leave it.
Walk away.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think their intention was just to let the dune migrate back over the top of it. It's weird, that area around it isn't really covered in beach grass. It's a lot of sand and bearberry and that lichen that grows on the dunes, and it's a weird spot. But it also, I mean, it's
a weird spot.
It's heavily impacted by the building.
Yeah.
Because it disrupts how it goes. There's the road. Built by the Coast Guard when the Coast Guard just like, well, we're ready to build this building. We're gonna put it right here. And they said, "Are you sure?" And they said, "Well, it's already built." So there we go. That's how it is.
I mean, it would be nice to see it revegetated. It's going to be really nice just to not see it.
We did put a photo monitoring requirement in there. So I guess if at any point you don't feel like it's doing anything or gaining hold, you always have the choice to take an enforcement and saying that it's not working. Or, hey, the photos that you provide us are showing that it's disturbed and it needs to not be disturbed like this. So what are you guys going to do to fix it? So.
You want to make a motion?
Yeah,
As
move
amended?
to issue as amended.
Is that a second? Okay. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Nantucket Land Bank, Maya Comet Pond. 81 non-assigned Great Pond.
This was the Phragmites removal project. So I did have some other things that are there that we haven't always put in. So there's an additional finding 3 that says the commission finds this order only covers the phase 1 of the project. Any expansion of this area shall require a notice of intent or amendment request, including but not limited to any impacts to wildlife that are present or using the area. I think that was from the discussion. Everyone was concerned about making sure that first phase was done and that the permit didn't go beyond kind of that scope.
Right. And that they didn't
anything
use
about
that like soil disruption thing.
Yep, and then there's also a 31 that everyone has to file a release from a butters to the pond prior to the start of work. So the tricky part with great ponds is if you're in the pond, you're technically within waters of the Commonwealth or of Nantucket. I'll say, I don't want to get yelled at by Maffey. So there's some dispute who owns the great ponds on Nantucket. That's needless to say, it's the town or the Commonwealth, but it's not necessarily the abutters to the pond. So if you're working within the pond, you're there. But I think having them file the form that says we're going to be working in the pond next to made-up number 50 Maya Comet Road, they understand that we're going to be doing this work is nice to get. That way when someone calls and says there are people doing work in the pond, I can say, well, you signed the form saying that you understood that. So thank you for your call. Let me know if you see anything weird, you know?
Any kayaks going across with Frank ladies.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's knock on wood, the land bank can hold it together.
Is there anything about so this pond, that parrot weed you were talking about?
Yeah.
Parrot feather?
Are they going to go after that? I mean, you mentioned the frag.
That's
a different
That's a whole different.
That's a whole different.
They just need to avoid
a
it
whole
with their
different chemical.
boats
Okay,
so
so
that
it's
they
not
don't spread it.
Yeah.
brought up, but I wasn't sure if that was going to be.
Well, it's brought up because there are areas where the methodology that they're going to be having to treat Phragmites changes a little bit because of the level of activity that they can do in that area. To be honest, when the pond got opened up, there's actually a lot of big talks about, you know, was that a good opportunity to try to get to some of the parrot feather that's been exposed, and that just never really exposed enough to do anything really drastic. Like, we were talking full, like, hey, let's go out with the blowtorch and find the parrot feather and just light it up, because it kills it.
You seem excited.
Kills it. Well, parrot feather is, for those who haven't dealt with parrot feather fragment sprouts.
Yeah.
So if you go through, you can't mechanically harvest it, because if you break it and it dislodges and floats down the pond, well, now you've just started a new stand of parrot feather. So herbicides are in the water are only minimally effective to a point. I mean, you have issues with it that if it gets exposed, if you can find something that will kill it for sure. And a water-based plant and fire are not friends. So they would have killed it, but it just didn't happen for us.
No.
Right. So, like, we were ready to go full-fledged. Like, we're calling DEP to get, like, the emergency. Like, this just happened. This is going to happen. But
sorry, that was done.
Oh, yeah. Well, you know how the pond got opened illegally? Lo and behold, we decided to treat our parrot feather illegally as well. So,
Yeah, I saw that torch over at that outside your office there. Propane bottle with the.
oh, we use that for shrink wrapping boats.
Oh,
It would
that's
be
small.
it would be a different torch for that, but very similar.
You know, the
Same idea.
military backpacks,
Yeah.
the whole thing.
Seen the movies.
Napalm.
Well, they make them that you can just hook a regular propane tank to, and there's like a wand
To your back.
to do
Oh,
it
yeah, go for it.
with
We have
backpacks.
one, actually.
They're pretty cool. So,
It's for weeds. I mean, it's made to kill weeds.
Yeah.
but
Clean.
The pyro says we wanted to ignite in buffer zones, since we can't use drip torches in buffer zones. We wanted to use this, but we just slide outside the buffer zone now and let it carry through.
fire is a very useful vegetation management
Very
tool.
clean.
And the wetlands are usually pretty good fire break.
No bop. Yeah.
Usually.
Yeah, until you hit that big stand of like cattails or phragmites, and it's like a big fireball.
Okay.
All right.
So, if someone wanted to make a motion on my Comet Pond.
So that was a draft, right? Moved issues drafted.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? And passes unanimously. Oh. What?
We closed 33 Nantucket Road tonight.
Yeah, we did.
I didn't draft one because I don't like to draft ones for projects that were disputed or involved neighbors of those things without discussion first. Anyone have any positive, negative questions, comments, concerns? Customers?
They did say that it would be native species within the 50. So we should hold them to that in the conditions.
Yeah.
Seem pretty. Neighbors happy.
Yeah, I mean, definitely.
I know they worked out. They
good.
had some correspondence in the interim too. I don't know what correspondence. I never know what happens when neighbors send letters that say we've ended our objection. But I thought the redesign actually was pretty well thought out. And I wish it's things that more people would do for water instead of just like direct infiltration to say we can't get the separation of groundwater we're looking for. Perhaps we should use plants. So it's nice to see on occasion.
Yeah, it is. I mean, maybe the neighbor's going to do something too. He's got issues, no matter what. Okay.
It's a funky house too.
So no, I don't think of anything.
All right. Cool. All right. Well, I'll draft that for the next meeting.
Okay. So Claire Bingham, 1 Penny Point. Sewer line, right?
Yep. This was for the sewer line and the little building infill addition. Sorry, the sewer line was also covered under the RDA down the road. The one note that Joanne had left for me that I know we had talked about before involved removing the tight tank if it gets exposed. I included kind of the whole like array of filing choices just for the fact that I think if it exposes, if they could access it and it looked like it was a real problem, we would probably issue out some sort of enforcement or emergency to get rid of it and then deal with it. But I think too that administratively, I think it's been discussed enough as part of it. If they came in and just did a minor modification to remove it, it would probably qualify under our current standards. But this could also be 8 years from now when the permit's expired, so or 100 years or however long it's going to be. But this definitely may be one of the projects that involves the most resource areas.
Yeah. And not much to say.
What's that?
No, I was looking at it and not much to say.
Well, it's just in one of those spots, you know, where it's just like you touch them all.
No, I get it. Pretty straightforward.
It's one of those cool houses that if you tried to build that today, you would never get permits for it. But
never.
It's been there since like the 20s.
Yeah.
So. It's cute. Yeah. And not for nothing. Anyone who hasn't met the owner, she's very nice.
Okay.
No addition is drafted.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Opposed?
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't like the additional living space in this resource area.
Okay.
Even though it's over the porch.
Okay, so that 1 Penny Point passes with Commissioner Harrisman opposed.
And then I was going to ask, I think everything else we continued because we had questions, with the exception of, did we want a positive order for the Great Point septic redos for next time?
I had no problem with it.
I think so, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That was kind of the general tenor that I had of it.
Yeah,
I think it's better than.
I mean, it's two cesspools.
There's
no options there.
Yeah, and without electricity, it kind of cuts down on the choices. Maybe you could have like an IA system run by a bike.
No kidding.
I'm kind of surprised they don't have composting out there. Or maybe they do.
But compost, I will tell you, composting toilets present another interesting challenge in some of those spots for a lot of different reasons. But then there's also the issue with composting toilets is where are you going to put the compost? And where's it going to go? And that's always the question with those.
Little buckets, bring it back
I know,
home when
like they
you leave.
can dry it out and burn it as a fuel source.
So,
well, they had that one. Well, the knowledge. Sorry.
And weirdly enough, composting
Yeah.
toilets are harder to get permits from the Board of Health
Right.
for, especially if you
Solo.
can put in a conventional style system. They're difficult to do.
Yeah. I think there's some up in
And I'm not sure how much a composting toilet there would work with if the uses is really as little as it is.
And you still have great water.
If it would just be more of like a rotting toilet.
Like a cesspool.
Which just sounds
You can compost
terrifying.
your food waste and stuff in them too. You can just put that in there, because at least, I know people that do that.
Yep. And you still have a great
It's their
ratio though.
compost pile, basically.
Yeah.
Lovely.
And
All right.
they fertilize their garden.
Yep. They have a garden up there?
No, not there, but.
Okay.
But that covers us.
Positive or
Yeah, I think positive.
All right. The other ones will wait for more information. They're a little more entangled with stuff.
Right.
Oh, well, except for if they make the plan changes that we talked about for 273, do you guys want to order for that one? You don't have to issue it, but
what'd you say?
Yeah, they're gonna
273,
move the
281.
driveway and-
If they relocate the driveway per the request.
Comic Con Road.
Did you want a positive for that one as well?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you're located in the revegetation.
Yeah.
And you're gonna see if they have to show the wall.
Yeah, I will. I'm not sure that our permit requirements can require them to show all structures that aren't in jurisdiction. We typically don't. However, if they're going to apply for a building permit, they may have to show it on the plan. I would think that doing the plan once would be the easier way to go. But so, we can talk more about that. That wall will be interesting because if it ever exposes, because of the Hennigan decision, I think there's a lot of case to be made that its intention of separating dirt that it's doing right now, that if the resource areas change around it, that it's no longer providing the use that it was when it was installed. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. Because that's essentially the Hennigan decision on Mass Ave to rebuild that house was essentially based on the fact that it was a house that was constructed in one resource area. And while the house didn't change, the resource area did. And it wouldn't have been permissible in that resource area. And that ended up going to state appellate court and getting upheld. So it'll be really interesting to see how that all plays forward. So, especially given the current regulatory environment. So, but again, that could be a discussion that's in 2 years. It could be a discussion that's in 20 years. So, it'd be really interesting to see.
Yeah, interesting.
I have tried to look for other spots where you could try to do this too, but there are not many others where they have that kind of space without getting really crazy. So, we'll see.
Okay. Approval of minutes. Everybody happy with the minutes? Everyone's happy with the minutes. Excellent. So approved by unanimous consent. It's funny on the MPDC, someone always has a comment like, "You read the minutes?" That's good. Monitoring reports.
Jeff?
Monitoring reports. I don't think we have any on the agenda this time. We just leave it on there in case something.
Yeah, I understand. Enforcement actions?
I do have one for enforcement actions. It's kind of interesting. So, as we all know, we have some issues with enforcement. Not any new enforcements. The newspaper, Peter, has recently filed a FOIA request for all enforcements that we've issued in the last 2 years. And if it's outside of the 2 years, all of the enforcement information for 36 Pocomo Road. So he is getting ready to write I like to say, a nice little opus on enforcement. But his request specifically asks for all the addresses, all the forms, all the property owner information, anyone who was identified as having done work on the properties related to it. Sounds like he's going big. So we are happily assembling that information.
I think that
This
might
is all
be
public
good.
information, right?
Yeah, so anything that we do, like if you come into our office and you want to pull the file for 54 Low Beach Road, I mean, you could pull the notice, the order, plans, anything anyone submits, And anytime that we issue an enforcement, that is automatically public record too. So we kind of keep a separate file. So anything that we compile for that goes into that file. So photos, any other documents that are there go into any discussions from here. That's why we talk about them on the minutes. It's all public record. So it's all available. Anyone can come down to the office and get it anytime. So him just asking through that channel is just a really easy way for him to say, instead of me going down and having to like dig and search for files, I'm sure you guys have a list. How about you just send me the stuff? So I'm not going to say I may have been involved in deciding how to do this, but I may have been. So it got triggered with the 195 one, and then
sounds like it's gonna be a good read.
Yeah.
So, I think there may be some angry folks.
Yeah.
That could be, but I should have thought of that sooner. Huh?
Yeah, probably a long time coming.
Maybe it'll dissuade some from violating our regulations in the future.
This is like an annual edition then, from then on, kind of like the old Roebuck Encyclopedia.
I think it would be nice that it would just be like any time that one comes in, like the court report, that it just gets a little blurb in the paper. Because honestly, from every enforcement we've had, those always go longer than any sort of fear of penalty or anything that's there. Is getting your name in the paper is always way worse. And I will say that's a direct quote from the Eel Point folks. They didn't appreciate landing on the front page of the Christmas edition of the Enquirer in there.
So this would be like the 4th of July edition.
Be a good time. So it takes a little bit to write that story.
Yeah, or Stroll Week the other.
Well, Stroll Week is too far away.
Too far away.
No,
the summer papers that always get the most reads are 4th of July and then like Pops Week.
Yeah.
Those are pretty good ones. So that's my update for enforcement. Is we received a FOIA request that Joanne and I are taking care of. So,
all right.
You don't have to do it, but it's just good to know that it came in.
Good. Okay. Good. So reports. CPC, of course, not.
But I did go to that one that the invitation you sent to us. It was pretty amazing. The University of Florida and Penn, they're doing 3D renderings of the downtown area down to 2 to 3 centimeters every view. And they've done, I think, like 4 or 5 streets. But what they did is they what's going to happen in 2088, and they were showing, the picture of Strait Wharf, where there was 2.5 feet of water above, just standing water, and then Easy Street. So it was pretty amazing. They had what's going to happen over these years, and the detailing was just impressive. It looked realistic. It was in color. It was a easy, short, quick, easy presentation, but it was scary at the same time.
88?
2088.
Yeah.
2 feet, yeah. The renderings were unbelievable, like the water, like it looked like someone took a picture.
Wow.
Pretty crazy.
But they should start raising buildings now.
Yeah.
It's more than raising buildings.
So I'm trying
Was
to
that
think.
in an
So
event,
probably
or
like
was
the
that in
windows
a-
of the backyard barbecue, like probably about a foot above the backyard barbecue windows, that entire area, and then.
So it'd probably be up to the morning.
What about where our sewer line is buried and the main electrical cable underwater?
That would be underwater.
Yeah.
It's underwater on the way
Easy
here.
Street.
So.
Right. Like this is the critical
Dreamland
infrastructure.
was
I know.
probably about a foot to a foot and a half of water on the backside of it.
What's that? I didn't.
The backside of the Dreamland looked like it had about a foot to a foot and a half, and then all those cottages, like the Enterprise and all that.
Oh, God.
Those were at the window, so that was like it was about 2 or 3 feet. Yeah.
And that's probably without Antarctica melting rapidly.
Yeah, they were going to share the PDF, and maybe Ian's got it, and he can share it with
More
the rest.
I know all this
Yeah.
stuff, so it's
I know,
not-
now you got a visual aid.
Yeah. Now everybody has a visual aid.
It was, you used to hear a couple of gaps, but like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they had lines that literally had elevation lines where it would be. So.
I would say too, the ones I looked at, they use fairly conservative projections too.
Yeah.
Like they weren't even taking like the real heavy sea level rise projections. I mean, some of the ones for the late 2000s get up as high as 10.
Yeah.
And they went like 2. So they picked on the. I would say they chose on the minimal end of projections.
Yeah.
And there are ones that are a lot bigger. So.
Yeah, the one thing he said that's just a base level.
Yeah,
That's
like we
not
know
even-
this is gonna
not
happen.
even a storm event or anything. No storm surge. There's not even like a 1 foot sea or anything like that. That's just flat day.
It's the bathtub.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we are the deer in headlights. Like, is it coming at us? Yep.
Well, we had it's interesting that the vice chairs and chairs of the planning and the planning economic development met with Libby and a couple select persons downtown last week. Basically, to see it, the strategic plan, which is basically a page of the slide, and it does list water quality in there. And I asked about it. They said, "Well, we almost didn't include it," but their point was that there are so many groups working on water quality that they didn't really consider as one of their priorities. They're more concerned with housing and continuous bike paths to Mid-Island and housing for town employees and 100%. Parking availability downtown. No stormwater management. So
Parking downtown before the water.
Yeah, exactly. So I guess not planning for that yet. But not much to have to do with us. That was pretty funny. We're all on the same page. Oh, and multiple traffic circle plans.
Where you had your vote.
NPDC is just parking management and traffic. That's all we do.
There you go.
Bike paths. Okay, commissioner comments?
Mosquitoes?
Nothing
Oh,
from
no
mosquitoes.
mosquitoes yet? I'm sorry.
I do have a comment though, because a photo came across as part of that pulpus.
With the fence through the wetland?
With the fence through the
Oh,
wetland.
yeah. That's already-
Yeah. So is that
already-
remedied or?
Yes, it is. They sent that in, and my first comment was, "Well, thank you for sending the picture. Now your fence needs to go." So,
Right, it was like
I won't even have to
right
come
through the
look. Thank you.
wetland.
well, no, it's my honest comment to them was, "Well, thank you for the report," because they actually were the reporting of the violation originally. And I said, "Well, thank you for reporting. We happened to go out and take a look, and there's a fence that runs through the resource area. Do you know anything about that?" "Oh no, yeah, we put that in." I said, "Well, you don't have a permit for it, so we're going to issue out enforcement actions. Since you were kind enough to report it, if you could remove it quickly here, we'll just call bygones bygones and just focus on the bigger issue. Hopefully it should be gone." So I always tell everyone, is when you call in to report, make sure that that your stuff is together. When you invite me onto your property and say, "I would like to report a violation," you can see it from my house that if you also have a violation, I am compelled to go, "Well, thanks for inviting me, but we'll be issuing out one for here and not one for you. Thanks for the call." So
You're both winners today.
yeah.
You can put that in your answer machine. If you're reporting, please.
I would bet, I'd be willing to bet that half of the people that report violations probably also have one. Of
course.
Yeah.
That they are more than happy to show you when you get there, to show what their neighbor or someone that they're not happy about it has done. And then you go like this. What? Yeah, what do you think?
Well, we've had a bunch of site visits like that where it's like, okay, come see the site, and then you're like, this looks terrible.
No,
This place is worse than
Yeah.
it's a little mind-boggling sometimes when you see, like, especially what sets people off to report it, and you're like, well, sorry. Here you go.
Have you, Mike, read?
No, nothing else. I will.
No.
I will motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Good.